Hey, what's up guys? My name is Azoh, and today we're going to talk about the lethality changes and a little bit about the implications of these. Now, I don't want you to get upset. I'm going to make a video, I promise. The item video is coming next week in the video schedule that I'm posting today or tomorrow, probably tomorrow. If you didn't know, I'm starting full-time next week, so it's going to be super exciting. But until then, and until the item video where I'm going to go through all my builds and discuss full lethality and rune pages and mastery pages, all that good stuff. Before that, just a couple of hours ago, because it's, well, kind of late for me, I released the patch notes for 7.2, and in those, they had been talking about this before, but in those they included a change to lethality. So if you didn't know before, lethality is the change to armor penetration, or it's the replacement of armor penetration. And lethality essentially is, or was, 40% of the lethality is the actual armor penetration you get. And then it scales upwards to 100%. But it's 40% at level 1, and then 100% at level 18. And then it ranges between based on the level of the enemy, the one you're attacking, if that was unclear. So it means if you had 10 lethality and you attacked someone who was level 1, you would get 4 armor penetration essentially. So you would ignore 4 armor, which isn't very good, and it's not very cost efficient. Now, I already had a build that kind of was playing around this, and while 60%, the increase to 60% is very good, I don't think it's going to change that build. Again, I'm going to bring that up in the item video. But what this does mean is that the lethality you get in runes and masteries is a lot more forgiving. Because previously, getting 40% value from your runes doesn't really sound that great on paper. If you were taking the old armor penetration runes and I told you, well, you get 40% of those, even if you use all the slots, that would have been terrible. Now, they did compensate for that by increasing the amount of lethality, which means, and this was kind of their idea that, well, if you give them more lethality, because originally, I do believe Duskblade and Edge Knight had 20 lethality, so they're thinking, well, you can stack a lot of lethality so that you get to kind of compensate early game, but you don't get to snowball as hard. And I don't really think this was achieved very, very well, because you just kind of go AD instead, and then you get lethality when it's more valuable. But essentially what you get now is if you have 60%, and at level 1, I mean 60%, we're only talking about the runes and masteries, because you don't really build any lethality at anyone you take at level 1, of course. So maybe at level 9 or something, and then you're basically halfway to 18. So then we're talking about an 80% value, and 80%. I mean, that 20% difference, you don't really feel that. You do if you play the champion a long time, if you use the items a long time, you will feel the difference, but it's not something that's going to hinder you. And especially because you can get more lethality than you can get armor penetration, it actually does kind of weigh up, compensate for it, so I should say. So I think this is actually a really good buff. Don't know if it's going to bring back full armor penetration or full lethality as it is now. But it might actually do that, because it's a lot more forgiving now. You don't lose as much value, and eventually when you start getting the items, you really have caught up to the original armor penetration. Now, the point with many champions who built armor penetration was snowballing, and you can't really put yourself behind immediately for snowballing later on as an assassin who really has to take control of the early game. But with the 60%, maybe. I mean, I did say that you don't really feel the 20% difference, and then I say, whoa, it's a 20% increase. Well, it's not. I'm sorry, it's a different term in Swedish, but from 40 to 60, so it's 20% more. Not 20% of 40, but 20% more. English. So on top of this buff, which, as I said, it might have some interesting changes, and even if it doesn't, it's just going to be more forgiving, which is super nice. and getting to like 80% when you actually get the items that matter a lot. They also gave Duskblade a small buff. The Knight's Book, or I mean, actually, this is not really a small buff because, okay, I mean, it's a kind of a small buff, never mind. Nice target damage is increased by 25. I guess. Sure, why not? This kind of feels more like a staple buff than anything, but I still like Edge Knight. I like it because of the vision control, and mainly because it has a lot of AD, it's vision control, it's lethality, it builds out of a BF sword, which I think a lot of people overlook. The components is a very important part of items in general and shouldn't be overlooked as often as it is. So just having that burst could be super nice. Edge Knight both gets a shorter cooldown, which is dope. 30 seconds means you can use it all the freaking time in lane. This kind of means not only for all-ins, but for pokes in general, or for like duels or anything. But this is an important ninja buff. Using Edge Knight activate ability while invisible camouflage will no longer break stealth, which means you can do it with Talon while stealthing in, while ulting in, or with Kha'Zix or whatever, which is actually really cool. I was kind of annoyed when I tested out Talon and this broke his invisibility. Is it a huge buff? Not really. But all these small things, if you can use them, do add up, and in the situation it might just be what saves you the fight, because someone is not thinking about when you come out of stealth, the first thing they think about isn't that you have an Edge Knight shield, but when you run into them in full view with Edge Knight, they can see and process it's Edge Knight, I need to use another spell first, and then I can do my CC or escape or whatever. They can probably still use escape with you having Edge Knight, but you know what I mean. They can use the CC or their somehow survivability spell that someone needs to target you as well. So it's a cool buff, and if people can use it, it can definitely be to some kind of good advantage. So looking forward to that. Honestly, so far it was a pretty cool patch, except for what the fuck. Shame on you, Riot. Shame on you. Not much that I think you guys are too interested about. I don't want to talk too much about the Azoh changes because I don't play enough Azoh to feel like I can give you guys an exact review, or a educated review, I should say, because I'm super educated, you know. There's one thing I'm good at in this life, it's being educated about League of Legends. Anyway, I love you guys. I'll see you guys next week when my full-time YouTube and streaming begins, scheduled tomorrow. If nothing else, yeah, full item video next week as well. First guide video that comes out, so look forward to that. Thank you guys very much for watching. If you have any input about the lethality, anything you want to add, post it in the comments. I love responding, so I'll see you guys then. Peace.